Our second album, Jackson. I'll let you take this one because
boy,
you've been on this album.
boy, I am probably the biggest. Josiah's up there with me too, but
I'm up there.
I,
I would
I'm
say.
I'm a real big stan for this album, despite not being like insanely crazy about his first album. But this is an album. It's called The Ooze, OOZ, and it is by King Krule, who is a small ginger British man. He released his debut album. Well, he released an EP in 2011 when he was like 17, I think, was when that came out. Like he was really young. And then he in 2013 he put out 6 Feet Beneath the Moon, which was his major label debut. And he worked with, I forget the name of the producer that like worked on 6 Feet Beneath the Moon, but there was he basically got taken under the wing of a producer, and kind of worked on that album, and then released it, and it was very, very well received. Like Easy Easy is a very popular indie song. Like that single was really great, and he had a unique voice and kind of style and sensibility and set of influences in the way that he sang. And so people were like, there were some people who were kind of out on it. They're like, I don't really fuck with this guy's voice or whatever, because and we'll talk about that a little bit, I'm sure. But a lot of people really liked it, and he kind of had a small cult following off that album. I remember Earl Sweatshirt said for like an entire year all he listened to was 6 Feet Beneath the Moon. And then King Krule, in the meantime, between 2013 and now, he did a lot of side projects. He had that Archie Marshall album, A New Place of Drown. It's a little more like kind of hip hop than what the earlier rockier King Krule stuff was, and kind of showing some of his other influences, allowing him to kind of experiment in other styles and things. And really, it was all really to prepare himself for this really, really expansive, towering thing that feels like his like grand statement of like, this is what King Krule is. Like he's had the first album, his debut breakout, and he does these side projects where he tinkers on some of the nuts and bolts of the other kind of stuff he wants to bring in, and then he drops this bad boy on us, which is I think 19 tracks. It's an hour and 6 minutes, and it is something. Like I've tried to describe this album to friends of mine that like don't really listen to King Krule, and the number of like genre titles I have to use to like fit in all the things they're incorporated makes it sound like I'm just like blabbering nonsense. Like, oh yeah, it's kind of post-punky and also very jazzy and kind of trip hop-y, and like it just sounds like a. But it really, I mean, at least for me, it really works. Like on this album, it's almost entirely, he has other people that worked on it, but it's like he's doing all the production here for the most part. I'm already in the same vein where Matty compares everything to Currents that he doesn't like. Everything that I like, I inevitably at some point will compare it to Blonde. And this album feels very Blonde-like to me, in where it's a singular artist who has a very specific emotional and sonic vision, and then they are kind of playing like orchestrator, like moving all these parts into place. Like the way that Frank Ocean made Blonde, like all the collaborators in that album were told everyone like, I don't know what the album sounds like. Like he just brings me in, has me work on something, and he's the one putting it all together. And so like that it has a similar feel here, where like as King Krule kind of wanders in and out of these tracks, and he's singing these songs that often bleed into each other and have these overwhelming atmospheres and things, you can really feel how, I think in what it might have been the Pitchfork review, they say like he has his hands on all of the knobs here. Like he's really conducting this kind of atmosphere, and I love this album like front to back. Like the opener, Biscuit Town, is a really great way to kind of like the whole first run of tracks on this album is really incredible. You got Biscuit Town, kind of this morose kind of wandering, almost like spoken word, kind of has like a hip hop beat to it. And then right into like the Locomotive, which is so fucking like tortured, and it's a very nocturnal album. And I said when it came out, I was like, oh man, I can't wait to like stumble home drunk at like 1:30 in the morning after like making bad decisions, and then like listen to this album and just like feel it. Because this album is basically about 3 things. It's about a breakup that he went through, it's about suffering from insomnia, and it's about writer's block. A lot of what this album is about not being able to write this album, feeling emotionally kind of stuck between places and lying awake at night, not being able to sleep, taking sleeping pills, not being able to work, and just not being able to express the thing that he's trying to express, not being able to put pen to words what he's trying to say. Like there's a line in check one where he's talking about the girl that broke up with him, and she says, "You asked me what her name is, I found it hard to write." This whole idea of like he's going through a deeply emotional experience and just is struggling artistically to convert it into art that feels true to the experiences that he's going through, and he's kind of going crazy. It's like, it reminds me a lot of if you've ever just been like up at 3 or 4 in the morning for just no good reason, and you just kind of feel like you're losing your mind a little bit, like in a very solitary way. It really captures that feeling, and I think this album can be a little long-winded at times. I think there are a couple of like some of the shorter, more abstract songs that I kind of find myself skipping every once and again, but like when this album is at its best, I think it is just incredible. And I think in terms of the overall kind of feel of it and the overall artistic idea behind it, I'm so in love with this album. Like fucking Dumb Surfer, that hook has been caught in my head all fucking week. It's like the way that he delivers some of the more like the old school kind of punk stuff on here has almost like an Iggy Pop feel. It's like a really classic like throwback punk feel to it. And like the way that he delivers some of those, like on Half Man Half Shark and on Dumb Surfer, it feels like he's like spitting the lyrics at you in his like sneering British accent, and it's just so grimy and so like of the city and nocturnal, and I'm really entranced by this album, and it makes for really good late night listening, really good rainy day listening. Some good shit right here.
Yeah, the comparison you made to Blonde I've actually heard before, because one of my friends said like this album is basically Frank Ocean for sad white boys who think they're cool for not liking hip-hop, and I was like, that's kind of Frank Ocean though. But like,
yeah, I was about to say, like, sad white boys is a lot of Frank Ocean's demographic, myself included.
But like, I like 6 Feet Under the Moon. I think I almost like it conceptually more than in execution. I think they're like this interesting mix of like kind of like 60s 50s guitar pop with like jazz and like post-punk, and just like if you watch his like What's in My Bag video, that kind of is a helpful context for his influences, and like you can hear them both on 6 Feet Under the Moon and on here. And I think that on the Ooze he basically like takes all the ideas and the influences of that and expands on them in such a perfect way. I'm going to make a brief comparison here actually to the new Blade Runner movie. I think that like it's that same thing of like all the ideas are there and like it's all there, but the execution is just so much better this time. And yeah, you talked about his voice a little bit. His voice is kind of an acquired taste, but it's very rooted in that kind of punk sound and is very like almost represents like the sound of teenage angst. Like another thing about the comparison to Blonde is that I think this album and also Blonde are kind of part of the first crop of like great albums coming out that have almost a distinctly millennial sound to them. Like it's this mixture of genres and interests that haven't really existed in past generations, and it's kind of like these are the first great like types of music where people are putting those ideas and sounds into fleshed out music, and it's really interesting.
Yeah. It's kind of a thing where like it's the effect of the internet on music is something that I've like thought a lot about.
Yeah.
And like obviously like any new artist nowadays is gonna have that, but like especially King Krule and Frank Ocean as these kind of loner figures and also just incredible geniuses who are just able to, because they grew up with the internet, because like and they're able to just like pull from all these different directions and influences, and to make something that like would only make sense inside their head, but they're such a talented artist that they're able to somehow get it out into the world in a way that makes sense. And that's truly what makes these albums like super unique.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm the coolest on this album out of all of us. I've said before, like I definitely appreciated it the first time I listened to it, and I see that like the whole atmosphere, like when you're listening to this album, you are like in this album, and so it being like an hour and 10 minutes is definitely a negative for me. Just being that like maybe I don't want to go to that place for that long, at all of this time. But like I definitely recognize all of the interesting things that are happening on here, and I think like even as you guys were sort of pointing out, like in the positives, there are moments that bleed together and like totally like whole songs just kind of get lost, and you're like, I don't really know what I'm listening to right now. And so for that reason, I'm not like over the moon about this project like a lot of people are, but I definitely like I really like kind of the sound and like what's happening on the album, and songs that stick out are definite like songs that I would say I definitely appreciate, like Biscuit Town, Check One, and Visual. I think Half Man Half Shark 2 are like the moments so like when I'm listening to it, it's like, this is cool, I like what I'm doing. It's sort of an album you put on for like an atmosphere or an experience. Like I was writing earlier today, like listening to this album, and it's cool to just kind of like be in this world with this dude doing whatever the hell he is doing. But like when I look back and think on the album, it's really the songs that kind of like have their own personalities and their own rhythms that sort of stick out to me. I do like his vocal style for the most part. When he's mumble talking a little bit too much and it's like almost getting into trip hoppy hip hop stuff, that's sort of where I'm falling off. But like predictably, the louder kind of like rockier songs, jazz rocky sort of songs, are the ones that I definitely dig the most. I wouldn't say like I dislike this album, but I'm definitely kind of cool on it comparatively. And seeing it get that hot 9.0 from Pitchfork.com, I mean, it's a win for the genre. It's a win for the culture. But I don't know if this is one of my favorites of the year. I don't think so.
Matty, you want to get some takes on it?
Like I said, I feel like I need to spend more time with this album, because I think it's much like Blonde. This album, it's very long and it's very dense, but
yeah,
it's very personal too. Yeah,
I would say it's subtly dense. Like Blonde is a very like at times a very minimal album, and that's kind of, but at the same time also just very dense with musical ideas, and that sort of that like I think again Blonde, we're gonna see a lot of comparisons, like we're gonna see a lot of Blonde-esque albums come out over the next couple of years, and I feel like the Ooze is probably one of the first ones to come out and have the its own sort of distinct style, but still have that very much of sort of the I guess just the fearlessness that Blonde has of, this is my vision completely, and I don't this is my own vision, with all my influences and whatnot, but still in this really unique whole where there's not really a whole lot of albums that sound like this, really, because the Ooze, again, he explores a lot of really different musical styles, but it's able to fit them all in like a really unique package, which again, it is a little overlong, could have been cut a little bit, but I do feel like with time, because already this album, on my listens really did hook me. So I'm gonna probably dive back in over the next couple of weeks. But one song you guys have not mentioned, which I'm shocked, but I will be the one.
Was it? I think it might be
Puppy?
Slush Puppy.
You got to say
Slush Puppy.
Yeah.
Fuck.
I had literally just pulled up the damn Genius lyrics Slush Puppy, because I was like, we need to briefly discuss the emotional fucking pain this man has endured upon me with this song. Because I talked a little bit about the concept of the album, but specifically the title, he described the title, the Ooze, as both the physical and metaphysical gunk that exists in us that we have to purge out of ourselves. So the shit, piss, snot, and cum, both physically and also metaphysically, in terms of just the emotional and mental shit that just gets clogged up in you that you just have to release out, or else you go insane. And that's kind of comes back to the whole writer's block thing, this idea of having this thing is stewing in you, and the way that he deals with emotional things. I'm sure a lot of artists, the way that they process emotion is okay, I'm gonna go take this and then funnel it into my art. And when you can't do that, it's like having to throw up and not being able to. It's just stuck in there, making you feel worse and making you feel sick and that sort of thing. And so I really, really love this. And the whole the refrain of "nothing is working with me," when he's just letting his vocals go completely, just not really trying to the way his vocals are unique is that he doesn't try to restrain them at all. Like, he's not trying to sing in a way that is pretty and is in control. Like, if there's real emotion that's just coming through, he will wail it.
Yeah, it was mentioning that fearlessness of just letting yourself go to the art, because like pretty much in order to make this album, that's what he had to do. He had to eventually just let himself go to the art, and Slush Puppy is kind of one of the big moments of the album. Like it's kind of it's one of the like the big emotional tracks that sort of kind of leads into the next couple of songs, where eventually you have Sizek 1, which is more of a moody, slower track. And then Half Man Half Shark, which is like this fucking like kind of crazy punk song, and then Dumb Surfer, which is like a kind of a spooky track, which is very.
I really like, in terms of the more rockier songs in this one, I love Emergency Blimp. That one is really, really good. That's the one that it's a little less like kind of a little less high energy, it's a little more like straightforward post-punk than some of the other ones, and I really like some. This is the one that was basically all about it's all about like his struggle with insomnia, and it's talking about a doctor who's telling him take these in the dead of night, and then the chorus of the song is these pills just make me drool, and it's so catchy and fun, but it's this whole like really kind of harrowing, and this whole experience that he's going through, and it's really rooted in like the city that he's from, and so there's this just kind of almost overwhelming atmosphere of it. Like the way that there was another really good piece on King Krule on The Ringer, I believe, that Micah Peters wrote, and one of the lines that really stuck out to me about it is it's like he says, what if you return home to your hometown, like the place that you're from, the place that's supposed to be, and you're going there to like have comfort and relax and recentered, but instead of feeling that, the concrete of the place that you're from just forms around your ankles and you feel stuck. And that's kind of like one of the emotional things of this album that like really gets me. It's this idea of like the atmosphere is dreamy and spooky and nocturnal, but it's also like kind of suffocating in some ways. Like there's some of these songs are super jazzy and like pleasant to listen to, but some of them are just like, some of the guitars are like tuned in strange ways where it's like, this is really pretty but also like unsettling in a way. And I really just like, it is very specific in terms of what it's trying to make you feel, and just sometimes with an album like this, some people are just gonna be like, I'm not trying to feel that right now, and I totally get that. So that's why it's like I've listened to this album a lot, but I've also like gone stretches where I don't listen to this album for a few days, because you really have to be in like a particular place and set state of mind, and even weather. Like when it's too hot, I can't listen to this album, like straight up. Like if it's too hot outside, I can't listen to this album, because I tried listening to it on like a sunny drive when I was home for the weekend, and it was just like, this is weird. I don't like the mix of sounds and what I'm visually seeing right now. But it's definitely gonna be one of those albums that, because it is so specific, that like I feel like 2 or 3 years from now, I'll just be in the exact mood of this album, and I'm gonna find myself coming back to it and just getting reamed by some of the lines on this album that like fucked me up real bad.
I want to speak briefly on maybe my favorite track on the album, which is Lonely Blue. When anytime King Krule in like any of his projects uses like the lyric or the track name Blue, it basically like it that, and it's usually like about a girl. Yes. Or it's just like basically subbed out for girl. But yeah, this track like is one of the more like throwback sounding ones. It's like starts out sounding like a 60s like guitar rock, well, like kind of like jazzy lounge song. Like the backing track on this actually kind of sounds like Bad Not Good on Heroin, but like, and then it just kind of like, yeah, it keeps going with that sound until like the third verse or so, where it gets more into like a heavier, not so much in the instrumentation, but like the lyrics and the way he's singing it gets very heavy and like post-punky, and he sounds just like so desolate. And the part like near the end where he's just like, I got high off butane, is so like all of that end part where he's just like yeah, just like pouring his soul into the music, I love so much.
Yeah, I was gonna say like, it's basically a '60s lounge band like having a drunken meltdown. Like this album, there's some very like really strong imagery throughout this album. Like there are images that pop into your head while listening to this because because just what he's describing, and also just sort of like moments in my own life where I'm kind of having that similar feeling of like Slush Puppy, just feeling nothing is working with me, just feeling like in an empty hole. And there's certain parts of this album, like I had a recent episode like where I had like sleep paralysis. Like it was only one time, but like there are parts of this album where again it was just I had that feeling of like where I was like when I had sleep paralysis of just like I can feel myself and I cannot control myself. Like I'm just going through life, just going through it for the sake or just I'm stuck in this body and I don't know what to do. And I'm just having meltdowns, like trying to figure out, like, what can I do to get out of this? Like, and sleep paralysis, by the way, on a slight off-topic note, sleep paralysis is fucking scary as shit, dude. God,
it's no fun, at all.
It's not fun, but yeah, this album again. I need to dive into it more, but again, it is long. It's a long album, so like, if you're going to get into this album, you have to like take some time to really dedicate yourself to get into it. Which again, but if you don't feel like basically more, I think after the first or second listen, you can kind of decide if it is worth diving deeper into. And for me, like it's definitely worth it. I just have to like find the time, pretty much.
The thing about like the length and the amount of kind of, you can call it filler, but like the just the pure amount of tracks on this is that like, you have to be able to buy into the atmosphere and the mood, and if you can do that, it's like already for me been very rewarding, like digging deeper into this, and I think it will continue to be rewarding in that way.
Yeah, I also, if we're gonna talk about songs that really stand out for us on this one, I would like to mention the title track, the Ooze, because that one is definitely like one of my favorites on the and like that one is very like it's the third to last track, but the Ooze and Midnight 01 are like kind of the emotional like climax of the album, where basically he's really like in the most explicit way like reflecting on the end of his relationship and reflecting on kind of wanting for it still, but also like being so broken by what happened and all of this stuff. And I think he really did something here that is truly like impressive, and whether it's going to be for everyone is a different thing, but I'm just happy to see, like, it's like one of those artists that's like when you hear them and then you're like, well, this is cool, this is like very different and I like this, and like we say all the time when you hear like a new artist, like, oh, I'd like to see what they do after this, and like to have like 4 years later to have him really fucking just do something really incredible with the unique set of the unique toolbox of skills and the unique set of influences that he has. To see him really just like take it and just crank the dials up on it was like awesome for me, and I was very happy. And also the other great thing about this album was it reminded the internet, but mainly me, of the incredible part of the King Krule Nardwuar interview, in which at the very end of the video Nardwuar asks King Krule, why should we care about King Krule? And then in the most like slurred British accent you've ever heard, he's like, you don't gotta care about it. I don't care about a lot. If you like it, you like it. If it sounds good, it sounds good, man. And he's just like so charming and just like seems kind of like he's a little drunk all the time, but like probably isn't. It's just the way that he talks. And I really like what he did here, and I'm happy. I like this album a lot. It's one of my album of the year contenders for sure.
I would agree. It's at least top 3 for me at this current as it stands.
I have a thing that I've expressed to a couple people, but it's like I have this thing where I just have kind of a rotating group of album of the years, because like all of them are like incredible pieces of art that like just all of them keep unseating each other, and it keeps moving around, and I need to do some soul searching before I figure out which one of them is the true album of the year and which one of them are merely cons. But yeah, like this is in the conversation for sure. It's on my short list as far as like 4 albums or so.
Also, I should mention that I think in like the Pitchfork piece, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. He did mention that this album, or at least he was really influenced by Dean Blunt. I just want to.
I was gonna say this is like that. This is like that fucking whatever. This makes me proud to be British. That's how this album is.
You know what this album is? This album is like Dean Blunt, but like if it was good. And so, like, for me, that just really...
Jackson, you're fired from the Indie Heads podcast?
I liked Redeemer. This was merely a goof. I actually liked Redeemer that one time.
I saw the meme and he had to go for it.
Jackson, you ignorant slut.
I'm gonna fucking... I will fight a man for his disrespect of Dean Blunt. But for real, though, like, this album, like I would actually, if you really like this, like, if you want kind of a more, like, condensed version of some of the more, like stuff like Lonely Blue, sort of, like, really hazy, sort of, you know... empty, like emotionally empty stuff. I would highly recommend The Narcissist 2 by Dean Blunt. Like it like really similar vibes, and also sort of, but also like artistically, sort of with the grand statement, sort of also like black metal of like, this is my vision, and you know, I don't care how messy it comes off as, like, this is my vision, this is how I see my work, ba-boom, this is how I'm doing it. Like, just all of this, all of these influences coming together into one unique whole, and yeah, I just want an excuse to recommend Dean Blunt to people. I feel like now is a good time. Like, if you like the Ooze, you will like black metal or The Narcissist. That was like
one of the first times on the podcast you brought up Dean Blunt, and it was like pretty pertinent to the conversation and actually like worth talking about.
Yeah, so it might be the only time actually.
It honestly might.
Fuck you. This is my podcast.
We josh you because we love you, my dear Matty.
I try to put the people on Dean Blunt. I try. I don't have the same reach that Jeremiah has when it comes to fucking motherfucking psychopop. Like, I want Redeemer to be a psychopop level album. But
Japanese Breakfast is now a sensation, though, and Dean Blunt is a weird, sad British man who looks kind of like Vince Staples and Amir Vaughn.
Jeremiah and I have never had more clout. Like, it's undeniable, folks. We're out here.
Dean Blunt is my favorite supporting cast member on The Wire.
I hate you guys. Any final thoughts on the Ooze? I think we kind of wrapped it up pretty nicely.
Yeah, it's good, brother.
Shouts out to the Always Sunny in Philadelphia theme song.
Oh yeah, that was fucking awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Which is on this album, by the way.
Yeah, that I was like playing like the first time I listened to it, I was like playing like no shame, I was playing Black Ops Zombies, and I think they actually kind of went together kind of well. But like I was like, and then all of a sudden, you know, you hear the theme song, and you're like, wait, am I listening? Is this still the Ooze? Like, did the track list fuck up? And I was like, oh, it still is. Okay.
Yeah,
that's like for months, like while he had like writer's block, like that's all he watched. Like he just lay in bed and watched It's Always Sunny.
It's near the end too, so it's like just when you're kind of like not really phasing out, but you're just wrapping up. You're just like, wait, what?
Yeah, it's such a strange little interlude.
It's kind of like the way that he like the whole album has this sort of feel where like he's just like he has an artistic vision, but he's also filling in all the cracks with just these like kind of like vignettes from his life in a way that like in the same way that like there's the Action Bronson album from this year was really cool how it did this, where like the entire album would have these little, not like skits, but just felt like almost like found recordings from his life that were supposed to like kind of give you a picture of the life that he was living. And Action Bronson is living a very different life from King Krule. It's a lot less sad, and there's a lot more like luxury foods and jumping off of yachts and things like that, but like it's the same sort of technique where you're like using these little like this very specific imagery and very specific kind of things that you're throwing into the edges of this thing to really give it a very personal, very specific idea of here is where I am, this is what I'm feeling. And that's one of the things that makes me really like this, because I like the art that is like that. So yeah, King Krule, the Ooze, it's good, brother.
You got to agree, you know. Smoking big old doinks in Amish.
Oof.
Unbelievable.
Hey, I'm smoking big doinks in London. That was horrible. That's the worst thing I've ever done.
All right, well, that's going to wrap up our podcast.